In the fateful summer of August 1941, the German Wehrmacht executed a massive multi-front advance into the Soviet Union, sweeping aside the border defenses and carving deep into the Russian interior, creating a crisis of unprecedented proportions for the Soviet Southwestern Front. To the south, Colonel General Mikhail Kirponos commanded the powerful Southwestern Front, a massive concentration of over 600,000 Soviet soldiers anchored on the ancient city of Kiev, determined to halt the relentless forward march of the German invader. The central sector of the Eastern Front had advanced far ahead of the flanks, creating a massive, bulging Soviet salient around Kiev that Adolf Hitler viewed as both an intolerable operational threat and an immense opportunity to destroy the Red Army's southern armies. On July 29th, General Georgi Zhukov, the chief of the Red Army's General Staff, met personally with Josef Stalin in the Kremlin, delivering a remarkably bold, prescient, and uncompromising operational proposal that would ultimately cost him his high-ranking command position. Zhukov argued with clinical precision that the German forces would inevitably exploit the massive operational gap between the Western and Southwestern fronts, warning Stalin that the entire Southwestern Front faced complete and catastrophic encirclement unless Kiev was immediately evacuated. Stalin reacted to this strategic proposal with intense fury, dismissing Zhukov's tactical analysis as utter rubbish, which prompted the proud general to resign on the spot, to be replaced by the more compliant and politically reliable Marshal Boris Shaposhnikov. In this counterfactual scenario, we explore the profound operational consequences of a single, decisive change in Soviet strategic decision-making. Joseph Stalin yields to the unified pressure of his military staff and authorizes the immediate, orderly evacuation of the Kiev Salient. Codenamed Operation Dnieper-Desna, this massive undertaking required the coordinated withdrawal of over 600,000 soldiers, thousands of heavy artillery pieces, and hundreds of tanks across the wide and exposed crossings of the majestic Dnieper River. To ensure the success of this monumental retreat, General Kirponos established a powerful, heavily reinforced rearguard spearheaded by General Potapov's Fifth Army, which launched furious localized counterattacks along the Irpin River to delay the advancing German infantry divisions. While the rearguard engaged in desperate, bloody holding actions, the bulk of the Southwestern Front's divisions systematically crossed the Dnieper River, utilizing modular pontoon bridges, heavy barges, and railway bridges before thoroughly demolishing them to slow the German pursuit. By executing a disciplined, phased withdrawal rather than holding the Kiev salient to the bitter end, the Red Army successfully preserved its organizational structure, heavy equipment, and experienced command staff, denying the Wehrmacht their greatest encirclement victory. Concurrently, General Heinz Guderian's Panzer Group II began its momentous southward pivot from Smolensk, expecting to trap a stationary and passive enemy, only to encounter empty, scorched earth territory as the Soviet forces slipped cleanly out of the closing trap. The German panzer divisions, forced to fight their way through a series of heavily fortified Soviet blocking positions along the Desna River, consumed massive quantities of precious fuel and suffered immense mechanical wear and tear for very little operational gain. By the time Guderian's armoured spearheads linked up with Ewald von Kleist's Panzer Group I near Lokvitsia in mid-September, they did not trap a massive Soviet army, but instead inherited a thoroughly evacuated, empty pocket of land. The survival of the Southwestern Front completely altered the operational balance of forces in the southern sector, establishing a continuous, deep echelon defensive line anchored on major river systems and dense forest belts from Sumy down to Poltava. Operating close to their primary supply hubs at Kharkiv and Kursk, the Soviet armies benefited from drastically shortened communication lines, receiving a steady flow of fresh reinforcements, ammunition, and heavy equipment directly from the industrial centers of the interior. This powerful and intact southern front prevented the rapid German conquest of the vital industrial Donbas region, denying the Wehrmacht access to the rich coal mines, steel mills, and heavy metallurgical factories of East Ukraine throughout the critical autumn of 1941. In the Crimean Peninsula, the preserved Soviet forces established a formidable defense at the narrow Perekop Isthmus, completely blocking General Erich von Manstein's 11th Army from rapidly penetrating the region and isolating the vital naval stronghold of Sevastopol. The most decisive and far-reaching impact of the Kiev evacuation was felt in the central sector during the preparation and execution of Operation Typhoon, the final German offensive designed to capture the Soviet capital of Moscow. Because Guderian's Panzer Group II was bogged down in a slow-moving, grueling pursuit in the south throughout August and September, the launch of the final drive on Moscow was delayed by several critical, irreplaceable weeks until October 2nd. This delay proved fatal for the German High Command, as the Wehrmacht was granted only a brief window of favourable autumn weather before the onset of the notorious mud season, which turned Russian roads into impassable quagmires. When the ground finally froze in November, allowing the advance to resume, the German divisions were exhausted, depleted, and completely unequipped for sub-zero winter temperatures, facing an increasingly formidable and deeply prepared Soviet defensive network. Warm editorial look. In the Crimean Peninsula, the preserved Soviet forces established a formidable defense at the narrow Perekop Isthmus, completely blocking General Erich von Manstein's 11th Army from rapidly penetrating the region and isolating the vital naval stronghold of Sevastopol. The most decisive and far-reaching impact of the Kiev evacuation was felt in the central sector during the preparation and execution of Operation Typhoon, the final German offensive designed to capture the Soviet capital of Moscow.